Certainly.
Look at that.
Hell!
No, God! No, God, please, no! No! No!
Stop the prime time, bitch.
Put in a sting! Put in a sting!
Oh my, that's silly. What a silly intro I made, because I am a silly man. Silly. Welcome everyone to Kooks, Cranks, and Iconoclast, the podcast. I'm your host, Michael Lucht, and what is there to say today? Well, how about, for starters, Happy Halloween, everybody. This is going to be the first of several somewhat smaller episodes, but I'm packing it all in for Halloween because I am nothing if not an entertainer. And I'm going to enter your tane right now with the first several Halloween episodes. I hope you enjoy. This one covers Homunculus. Is the elusive silence. Can't find. Never will. Well, never say never, but whatever. Put it on my tombstone. Pizza. Bing bong. You know what's scary? Red lines in America. A man on fire hanging from a bridge in Houston, Texas. There's also this little ditty that Mr. Wells sent me.
Dallas police spotted the man near 5 Mile Creek in Oak Cliff just after 5 Wednesday afternoon wearing only a baseball cap. He has been exposing himself to women and children in the Oak Cliff area for more than 5 years.
5 years. This is back in the 90s. So everything is fine and dandy in Oak Cliff now. Don't worry about it, folks. 5 years it took to catch a naked creek man. Wonder what he's doing now. Anywho, you probably couldn't hear it too well earlier because of all the crazy background wackiness going on. But this episode is going to cover homunculi. That's the proper plural term for homunculus, which means little man. Little man. Little man tells you to build a model airplane. Doodly doo. So get ready to hear me purposely mispronounce homunculus as many times as I possibly can, for fun. For as long as human beings have gazed into fire or water or nothingness, seen their own reflection shimmer back at them, they've imagined what it might mean to create life from the raw materials of the world. The impulse to shape a living being, something smaller, purer, predictable, far more controllable, threads through all of our oldest myths. In ancient Mesopotamia, a whole Mesopotamia, there's the Enuma Elish. The gods form humanity from the blood of a monstrous slain deity. In Genesis, if you're into that, clay becomes flesh under divine breath. The Greeks told of Pygmalion. Sounds like a lot of pigs, but it's just one person, actually. This is a sculpture who awoke with a kiss. And Prometheus, who molded mankind from clay and the ashes of titans, and stole fire to animate it. Each of these myths hides the same forbidden spark, that making life might be wrested, wrenched from the tyrannical grip of the divine and performed by mortal hands. By the Middle Ages, this yearning took on a new language, alchemy, half chemistry, half magic. Half shark, alligator, half man, half amazing.
Half man, half shark.
Alchemists sought not only gold, but perfection, to refine matter until it became spirit. They believed that if the prima materia, the primal substance, a veritable primordial ooze, if you will, secret of the ooze, could be purified enough, it might yield a living essence. The term homunculus, Latin for little man, first appeared in medical texts before it found its occult home. Medieval anatomists speculated that sperm, that's right, sperm,
Ejaculate.
already contained a fully formed miniature human, curled within, awaiting growth in the womb. So, fellas, listen up. You've got a veritable militia sitting in your bowels, raring to go. The idea, later called preformationism, blurred the line between science and symbolism, but it was Paracelsus, a.k.a. Philippus Aureolus Theophrastus Bombastus von Hohenheim,
Mr. Bombastic.
16th century Swiss physician. Swiss physician. They called him the Swiss physicist. Probably. He was an alchemist who transformed that speculation into legend. Paracelsus, who I'll probably from here on out be referring to as Shaggy Bombastus, wrote in his De Natura Rerum, 1537, quote, "That which is enclosed in the semen of a man is a human being, though imperfect. If it be kept in a sealed vessel for 40 days and fed wisely with the arcanum of man's blood, it becomes a living infant, having the form of man but much smaller." Unquote. By the way, when you hear me do the voice, I'm speaking old-timey for anyone that was old-timey. It was quite obviously a shocking claim, life without womb or woman. Finally, the Catholic Church would have a way to forever abolish fucking. His recipe, if you can call it that, reads today like a fever dream of protobiology. Take a human seed, seal it in a glass vial, bury it in horse shit. Literally. This is not some artsy-fartsy, fancy pantaloons poetry speak. Horse shit is the alchemist's universal incubator. And that's probably actually a rollicking metaphor for something alchemical. But anyways, it stays in the horse shit for 40 days. After 40 days, it will begin to move. Feed it daily with the secret essence of human blood for another 40 weeks. You gotta have a lot of time on your hands to make a homunculus. When grown, becomes a living, breathing child, translucent and tiny, the homunculus. Gross. To Paracelsus, or Shaggy Bombastus, this wasn't simple heresy or experiment. It was a metaphor for spiritual generation. He saw the homunculus as a symbol of inner transformation, the alchemist's rebirth of himself in miniature form. But later readers, hungry for power and miracles, took him literally, as people tend to do with certain writings that are just found after a certain time. Something wrong with us, probably. Throughout the 16th and 17th centuries, the homunculus passed from Shaggy Bombastus' symbolic imagination into the workshops of Europe's most ambitious adepts. Manuscripts described homunculi, the plural form, that could speak, predict the future, or guard their creator. The Liber Vaccae, I believe that's how you say it, an earlier Arabic work known in Latin as the Book of the Cow. I know we were talking about horse shit, but there's cows involved as well. This offered an even stranger recipe. Take the sperm of a man and place it within the womb of a cow. Delivery method is dealer's choice, I assume. Seal it, feed the cow on blood for 40 days, and at the end you will find within a living thing resembling a man but transparent. Will live by its own spirit. It's weird as fuck, yo. These recipes merged embryology, magic, and grotesque misunderstandings of reproduction. Yet behind the grotesquerie, a deeper wish glimmered. The hope that knowledge itself could conceive a little baby man. By the 1600s, Europe was saturated. I mean, straight up slathered even. Stories of alchemists creating little spirits in flasks. Like chimps in a beat-off contest, creating homunculi said to whisper secrets or perform miracles for their masters. Some tales called them elementals, creatures aligned with earth, air, fire, or water. To the church, this was witchcraft, but so was menstruation. They fucking hated everything. To natural philosophers, however, this was perhaps an undiscovered law of nature. And then, in the winter of 1659, in the Austrian Alps, rumors said that one nobleman had succeeded. It's always the nobility. Count Johann Ferdinand von Kufstein, I'm serious, that's his name, was born into the minor nobility of Lower Austria in the early 17th century. He lived during a time of political anxiety and religious paranoia. Gee, I wonder what that's like. The years following the 30 Years' War, when occult study had migrated from monasteries into the private libraries of princes and counts. I said counts. Anywho, by all accounts, Kufstein was wealthy, educated, and restless. A dangerous combination. He kept company with scholars, alchemists, and a certain Benedictine abbot named Geloni, who shared his fascination with the creation of life by artificial means. Apparently, to activate a lot of ritual magic back then, you had to have a defrocked clergyman up in the mix. Although this is mostly just for performing black masses and various satanic bullshit. The story survives primarily through one remarkable and troubling document, a criminal record discovered in the archives of Vienna, birthplace of tiny little wieners. Tiny little wieners, tiny little men. This is in the late 19th century, referencing their trial for, quote, magical practices and spirit conjuration, unquote. According to this account, Kufstein and Geloni established a secret laboratory at Hellbrunn Castle near Salzburg. There, amid retorts and crucibles, they performed a series of experiments aimed at breeding or summoning living beings inside of glass bottles. Witnesses later testified that they produced 10 small creatures, each housed within its own sealed vessel, half biological, half ethereal. The report lists them by character and temperament. A king, a queen, a monk, a nun, a serpent, a lion, a griffin, and 3 others no one gave enough of a shit about to assign any kind of personality traits. No, some sources say elemental spirits of air, water, and fire. Each, it was said, floated in a clear fluid. Your guess is as good as mine, folks. And that they moved or spoke when addressed by the count. They could answer questions, predict the weather, or influence events beyond the castle walls. Kufstein reportedly called them his quote-unquote bottle friends. I think we've all had a few of those in our lives, folks, haven't we? Anywho, rumors spread quickly through Salzburg clergy. Bunch of gossiping tattletales. The count's servants whispered of nocturnal lights, disembodied voices, and tiny faces in the window panes. Very creepy shit. In 1659, a raid ordered by ecclesiastical authorities discovered the laboratory. Inside, according to the surviving summary, were 10 glass vessels sealed with strange characters, each containing a small figure immersed in spiritus. Spiritus, huh? I guess that's what they're calling it. Kufstein and Geloni were charged with dealing with spirits and blasphemous alchemy. And under interrogation, Kufstein insisted that these were not demons, but natural homunculi. Perfectly natural. Brought forth by divine permission through secret philosophical means. Come on, guys. Let a man homunculate. The court disagreed. Well, I disagree with their silly wigs. The count was imprisoned for several years. Abbot Geloni, as a cleric, was defrocked and confined to monastic arrest. Okay, so now he can get down with the black masses. Anyways, the vessels were destroyed, though some said their contents were buried in the monastery garden, still writhing in the glass. That is very sad. Our knowledge of the case comes mainly from a report published in 1851 by Dr. Johann Ferdinand von Schmidt, a Viennese archivist who claimed to have found the trial record in the Archive de KK Landesgericht Salzburg. Nailed it! He summarized the testimony and described marginal sketches showing small human figures labeled homunculi number 1 through 10. A top 10 homunculi countdown. But skeptics quickly noted problems. The language was partly modernized and no original file has since surfaced. It may have been lost, misfiled, or perhaps exaggerated by von Schmidt himself, who moved in romantic circles fascinated by Faustian lore. As all of this screams nothing if not romantic. Still, something nutty happened at Hellbrunn. You get it? Because it's a double entendre, you see. Contemporary diaries from Salzburg mention a nobleman imprisoned for making living images, unquote. And in the archives of the Benedictine Abbey of Creamsmunster, seriously, Creamsmunster? It's a little on the nose, don't you think? All right, I gotta stop myself. A note from 1661 refers cryptically to the Count's bottles and their voices. How should we interpret and or even attempt to understand this? Historians and scientists have proposed several possibilities. 1. A hoax or theatrical illusion. Kufstein may have been duped, the duper, or the dupee, you, me, and dupree. The moving figures could have been wax miniatures animated by rising gas in sealed flasks, a parlor trick known since the 1500s using heat and alcohol vapors to create motion. Coupled with ventriloquism or hidden tubes, such effects could easily produce the illusion of talking spirits, because people didn't have TV or the internets back then. 2. Chemical curiosity. The Count's spirits may have been chemical reactions, mixtures of metals and acids creating phosphorescent glow or bubbling movement. Early alchemists often mistook such reactions for signs of life. The boundary between chemistry and biology had not yet hardened. And these motherfuckers would lose their minds from an Alka-Seltzer tablet. Vinegar and baking soda would have won a fucking Oscar or some shit. 3. Spirit conjuration. To the occult mind of the 17th century, homunculus and familiar spirits were nearly interchangeable. The bottles may have served as vessels for bound elemental entities, air, water, fire, or earth spirits, analogous to the genie of the lamp of Arabic lore, aka the jinn. If Kufstein was following grimoires like the Ars Notaria, aka the Ars, or the Claviculus Solomonis, his homunculi could have been symbolic prisons for summoned intelligences. 4. Proto-scientific embryology. A more charitable, quote-unquote, interpretation views Kufstein as a misguided natural philosopher exploring spontaneous generation. The 17th century still debated whether small life forms could arise from decaying matter, keeping in mind that they didn't know shit about germs yet. Perhaps he was observing microorganisms through primitive magnifiers, interpreting their motion as tiny humans. In that sense, his bottles were the first incubators of illusion, not of life. 5. Psychological projection. Modern psychologists might call the homunculi projections of divided selfhood, miniature reflections of Kufstein's own psyche, categorized into roles: king, queen, monk, serpent, etc. Carlos Gustav Jung would have loved this shit. In an age when alchemy was as much inner quest as outer experiment, the 10 bottles could represent a fragmented soul externalized into glass. When Kufstein emerged from imprisonment, he withdrew from the public life. Good call. He died quietly in 1677, leaving behind scattered letters filled with cryptic alchemical allegories. Quote, "They call me mad, yet I have seen the image of man as he might be when freed of corruption, small, pure, and burning with light. Okay. The story might have ended there, fading into local legend, but across Europe, whispers of the bottled souls of Salzburg spread among alchemists and mystics. And by the 18th century, engravings depicted tiny winged figures inside jars labeled Homunculi Kufsteini. To some, it was proof that Shaggy Bombastus Paracelsus's dreams had been realized. To others, it was a cautionary emblem of hubris. Damn you, mankind, and your hubrises. And so, long after the counts, bottles were shattered, the idea of the homunculus lived on, ready to evolve again in the hands of poets and scientists alike. When Count Kufstein's story faded from memory, Europe was entering an age that seemed to leave alchemy behind. The microscope was sharpening, chemistry was taking shape as a scientific discipline, and yet the dream of making life did not die. It merely changed its language. In the early 19th century, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, poet, scientist, yo-yo champ, and alchemist of the imagination, returned to the Paracelsian image in Faust Part 2. There, the learned Wagner, Faust's assistant, declares triumphantly,
What is a scientist?
"Now let a man be made. I will show the world that nature's womb is not the only one that breathes." Yuck. Inside a flask, a tiny, glowing being materializes. Homunculus, pure intellect and energy, yearning to become fully human. Like Pinocchio. Goethe's creature is not flesh but spirit, a living symbol of modern reason itself, trapped in glass. In Goethe's hands, the homunculus became the child of science and hubris. Neither evil nor divine, but a question. What happens when knowledge itself learns to live? The 18th and 19th centuries brought real experiments which blurred the line between mechanical and organic life. Luigi Galvani made frogs' legs twitch with electricity. Giovanni Aldini, his nephew, famously shocked the corpses of criminals trying to reignite life with sparks. Crowds watched as dead muscles convulsed and eyes flickered open. People were all a bunch of sick fucks and they just ate it up. To many observers, this is proof that the anima, the vital spark of life, could be artificially kindled. To others, it was proof that humans were meddling with forces meant strictly for gods. In 1818, Mary Shelley distilled these anxieties into Frankenstein, aka the modern Prometheus. Her doctor creates a being from cadavers animated by electricity. Though Shelley never uses the word homunculus, the lineage is unmistakable. Shaggy Bombastus Paracelsus, by way of the Enlightenment Laboratory. Both Goethe's homunculus and Shelley's creature are reflections of the same new fear, that science had inherited alchemy's hubris and might one day succeed too well. By the late 19th century, as spiritualism and theosophy swept across Europe, the homunculus returned once again to the occult underground. Magicians like Eliphas Levi, Franz Hartmann, and later Aleister Master Crowley wrote of artificial elementals and created beings born from the will of the magical adept. Levi called them larvae. Ooh, what? I gotta say it again. Levi called them larvae. Astral shapes, molded from imagination and magnetism. Hartmann, who was both a physician and a theosophist, openly defended Shaggy Bombastus Paracelsus's homunculus as a misunderstood allegory of spiritual generation. For these thinkers, the bottle became a metaphor for the human mind as a vessel. Fucking empty. Nah, it was where it was, you could concentrate the will, and it would condense thought to an entity. In Prague and Vienna, laboratories of mesmerists and proto-psychical researchers experimented with ectoplasm. Yeah, ectoplasm. thought forms, and psychic embryos. Tiny handprints, faces, and moving shapes appeared in photographs and seances. They were once again little lives in glass, though now the glass was the camera lens. The homunculus had migrated from alchemy to psychology, from crucibles to consciousness. The 20th century saw biology claim the power once dreamt of by alchemists. In 1924, Hans Spemann
Ejaculate.
performed the organizer experiment on salamander embryos, splitting and recombining cells to induce new bodies. Also gross. He later coined a term for his ideal future project: the creation of an organism from the nucleus of a single cell. In other words, cloning, the scientific homunculus. Today, synthetic biologists write DNA as if it were code, constructing self-replicating cells from digital sequences. Artificial intelligence researchers in their own domain pursue consciousness through algorithms. Both echo the same ancient ambition: create independent intelligence in a man-made vessel. The vessel is changed from glass flasks to silicon chips, but the story has not. Each time humanity masters a new medium, it tries to pour life into it.
Ejaculate.
Some philosophers call this the digital homunculus, the small, thinking self we build inside machines to act in our image. Where Shaggy Bombastus Paracelsus envisioned a glowing infant of flesh and spirit, a fucking weirdo, today's alchemists conjure chatbots, neural networks, and androids that speak with our own voices. And just as Kufstein claimed his bottled beings could answer questions, predict outcomes, and serve their creator, we now summon our invisible assistants from luminous screens. Why does this idea endure? Because the homunculus is more than a superstition. It is a mirror of human self-creation. Also, I'm going to say it now, get it out of the way, gray aliens. I bet these little astronauts looked exactly like gray aliens. That's just speculation on my part. To the theologians, it marks the boundary between creature and creator. To scientists, it is a metaphor for experimentation itself. To psychologists, it is the model of the inner self, the little man in the head that we imagine steering the body, like that one alien from Men in Black, kind of. Anyway, in fact, if you look up the image of what the psychological interpretation of a homunculus looks like, it's something you probably couldn't decide whether to pity or exterminate on sight. Apparently, this figure's anomalous physiology is based upon which parts of the body receive the most sensory stimulation. Because humans are gross little creatures, aren't we? Moving on. Every interpretation points back to the same paradox, that we wish to understand life by making it, and in making it, we confront our own reflection. Welcome to the hood. Parenthood.
We baby kids. Baby kids?
Yeah, we don't die, we multiply.
In the archives of Salzburg, the Count's legend survives as a curiosity. But imagine the scene. 10 bottles lined on a table, each reflecting a candlelight. Within, the ghostly semblance of a face. Whether a trick, a dream, or a revelation, Kufstein's experiments captured something timeless. The longing to externalize the soul. He lived at the edge of chemistry and mysticism, in the same twilight zone that modern innovators still inhabit today. When engineers design self-replicating code, when scientists grow organs in bioreactors, when artists train machines to imitate thought, when fry cooks make chicken sandwiches with more chicken as the bread, they all stand, knowingly or not, beside the Count's shattered flasks. As the 20th century moved deeper into its atomic and psychological revolutions, a small but influential current of occult revivalists tried to reclaim the alchemical idea of artificial life in explicitly magical form. One of the most notorious was Aleister Assmaster Crowley, whose 1917 novel Moonchild described a ritual to create in whom the divine and human should be one. Actually, if it's Crowley and you want to get voice accurate, in whom the divine and human should be one. Something close to that. Crowley framed it as the next stage of the homunculus dream. Living those homunculus dreams. Not born of matter and chemistry, but of carefully directed will and symbolism. To him, the homunculus was now a magical embryo, gestated not in glass nor horse shit, not entirely at least, but in imagination and ritual energy. Decades later, in 1946, this idea resurfaced in Southern California through two of Crowley's American followers. Jack Parsons, a rocket engineer who co-founded the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and Lafayette Ronald Hubbard, then a Pulp Fiction writer turned self-styled magician and all-around just disgusting muppet of a man. Together, they formed a series of rituals that Parsons called the Babylon Working. Its purpose, recorded in his surviving diaries, was to invoke the Scarlet Woman and bring her to physical manifestation. Shortly afterwards, Parsons met the artist Marjorie Cameron, whom he believed to be the human incarnation of Babylon, the fiery goddess who would conceive a quote-unquote moonchild destined to transform the Aeon. I remember that happened. To historians of esotericism, the Babylon Working marks the final major attempt to create a modern homunculus, translated into the psychosexual magical language of Thelema. Skeptics, the dramatized psychological experiment, an effort to externalize myth through ritual theater. Parsons himself interpreted it as a successful endeavor on a symbolic level, an awakening of feminine cosmic energy rather than the literal birth of a magical child. Still, after Parsons' death in 1952, rumors multiplied. Fringe writers in the 1960s and 70s claimed that the ritual had, quote-unquote, opened a portal or produced an incarnate successor of occult power. Later conspiracy literature sometimes pointed, without evidence, to various figures in mid-century military or occult circles, including names such as Michael Aquino, as alleged products or heirs of the quote-unquote Moonchild operation. But old Mickey Eddie Munster Aquino will be the focus of an extensive future episode. Some say it took shape in the form of Scientology its very self. No documentation supports these identifications. They belong to the mythology that grew around Parsons' legend, blending Cold War paranoia, UFO lore, and modern alchemy into one narrative of forbidden creation. What this whole, shall we say, incident demonstrates, however, is that the homunculus never left the stage. It simply shifted mediums again, from Paracelsus Bombastus's glass vials to Kufstein's spirit bottles to Crowley's astral wombs. Yuck. And finally to the psychological and mythic theater of the 20th century. Each generation rediscovers the same idea in its own language, whether through chemistry, ritual, or code. Across 5 centuries, the homunculus has changed its form, but not its essence. It began as clay and semen,
ejaculate,
fed by blood,
ejaculate,
became gas and electricity,
ejaculate,
fed by voltage.
ejaculate.
Now it's data and code. Fed by information.
Ejaculate.
Always the same pattern. Humanity reaching inward to recreate itself outward. Perhaps the real homunculus was never in the bottle, but in the imagination of its maker, the spark that refuses to accept the limits of nature. 'Cause ain't nobody gonna tell us anything. They called it impossible, wrote Paracelsus Bombastus. Yet all things are possible to him who knows the truth of nature. Unquote. From the laboratories of Salzburg to the circuits of modern machines, that belief endures, that knowledge, if refined enough, can breathe. And somewhere, perhaps, Count Kufstein would look upon our glowing screens and recognize in their shifting light the descendants of his own bottled souls. And don't drink out of that flask. The homunculi shall return sometime in the not-too-distant future. That's going to be it for this first endeavor on our series of several Halloween episodes. I thank you folks for listening. I've got some stuff that's actually kind of spooky, but I wanted to start out goofy and set your expectations low and hopefully build higher with a 1-2 gut punch of just some of the weirdest shit I've found. So, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Happy Halloween, everybody. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one.
Ejaculate.